Ganesh, for inviting me, and especially with Sophia here. Sophia, just listening to you, I feel that I should just keep listening. But I'm going to be able to pick up on what you said and emphasize some things and perhaps elaborate a few. We've all asked, the SVP over here are asking, we want to make a difference, is what we're saying. The question is, how should we make that difference? And the first way one answers such a question is, what is the tool I will use? What is the strategy I'm going to use to make a difference? I think the time has come to ask, what is going to become different in me? What must become different in me so that I can make a difference? This is the time to introspect about the ideas that we have been using to achieve the successes that we have achieved so far as a global economy and in our own organizations and our personal lives. To sit back and question whether those ways that we have celebrated and used so well may not have been actually the cause of the problem that we are now confronted with. The fragility of the global economy has been demonstrated in the last 3 months. A shock, a small virus, a shock has upset a whole global economic system. It's provided to us like a stress test, and many people here are engineers, and they know that the way to test the structure of a system is to put it into a wind tunnel or to provide it some other stress test, and then to see what creaks or breaks or cracks in the system. And we are seeing right now so many breaks and cracks in not just the global economic systems and our own country systems, but the social systems also. So very clearly, the world that we were relishing and living in was a very fragile world. The systems were very fragile. What are we doing now? We are giving the system a strong treatment, a strong medicine to take care of the shock that we've got. Okay? And the strong treatment we're giving it at the moment is lock down the whole world. That lockdown, that treatment is causing so many side effects in the overall well-being of economies and societies and human beings also. We are realizing that we don't understand the whole system. It's like in medicine, if there is a serious problem in one organ, some specialists will devise some strong medicine to take care of that illness, that disease. But the side effects, the effects on other organs quite often result in the patient dying of the side effects rather than of the original disease. So we are in that situation now that we are giving a medicine which is very strong and realizing that maybe we don't understand the whole system, and the side effects of the strong medicine are waking us up to the condition of the health of the whole system. And you mentioned the condition of people that have been out of our sight. Physically, they were in our sight, but in our mind, we didn't know how they lived and what stresses they were going through in their lives. So we have in the world been developing since the first enlightenment of science, a way of learning about the world, which is to get to know more and more about small parts of the world, more and more. So more specialized knowledge about various parts of the world. And the higher your knowledge is, the PhD gets you to be a specialist on an even smaller part of the world. So this has broken up our knowledge of the system, this way of learning, of having domain expertise. And we are realizing right now the consequences of that, because we've gotten now the people who have domain expertise in medicine, and they are prescribing treatments. And there are other persons who may be domain experts in supply chains who are now saying, but hey, you're knocking off supply chains. And you can see experts in the economy saying, but what about the bad effects on us? And the experts in medicine say, but the solutions that you used to have are the ones that are causing the economy to have been, the system to be so fragile. So they can't even understand each other. They don't have a common model of the whole system. It's a time for general practitioners actually, and not specialists, if I could say so. The second order effects of and third order effects of giving this strong medicine of the lockdown is making very rapidly visible to us how overall well-being of human beings and society is being affected while we are taking care of, well, preventing illness to their bodies. So well-being of citizens is what we ultimately should be devising systems for, what human beings should be devising social systems and economic systems for. And we are realizing that our systems as designed were not improving well-being, and certainly not for a very large number of people. In our country, I would say there are more than half the people whose well-being was not being improved, whose lives were not becoming more resilient and safe, even though our GDP and growth was rising. So let me ask, there's a couple of cartoons I have, if you'll allow me to use them, and I'm going to ask my two colleagues here, Mihir and Kabir, who I'll introduce in a little while, to please help me with the cartoons just now. Mihir, I have a cartoon of, well, you're familiar with it, the people in the boat.
I'll project my screen now. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Over to you, Mr. Man.
Thank you. Well, you can all see this cartoon. Some people are bailing out because they are drowning or fear they might drown, and others are celebrating at the back. In this picture, they do not have their wine glasses in their hands. There's another version of this picture, the original one, which had the people with wine glasses, champagne glasses in their hands. And then it was felt that, we shouldn't be advertising alcohol, so it's been taken off. But right now, I do feel that even in this COVID pandemic, I'm here connected with many WhatsApp groups here in India, and amongst my neighbors, 250 of them in this community, and people who I've worked with, who retired, a couple of hundred of them. And I'm noticing, and they are noticing also, that the large part of their conversation online is about, well, what are you drinking? Can we have a party tonight? I hope they say that the lockdown will lift before my scotch runs out. And whereas there are people who are saying, I want food and drinking water today. And so even in this lockdown, we are using technology to keep on life as we've enjoyed it, and hoping that the lockdown will lift soon enough for us to be able to get back to life as we knew it and enjoyed it. So there is a mental attitude of ourselves towards ourselves and towards others around us. This must change. This must change. We might have to accept that we are the problem for others. We are the problem in the world. It's hard to accept, but maybe, so I'm putting it up as a question. In this picture also, the view is, and it's a view that has been carrying on, that we are all right. The problem is the people out there. It's either the government is the problem, or these indisciplined people, uneducated people, the citizens around me, they are the problem. I'm not the problem. The system would be much better if they were different and if they did different things. I will carry on doing what I'm doing and tell them, in fact, to do what I'm doing, not realizing that maybe what I was doing and the way I thought has caused the whole system to be so fragile. So it is our beliefs and our worldviews that must change. This very picture allows me to point out another one. The theory of economic growth that has become predominant, especially in the last 100 years, but the seeds of it were there when they said, be self-interested, or human beings are rational and purely self-interested. It has become the way of running companies, running economies, that look after yourself, manage your company to produce more results for your shareholders and your company. And somehow, by everyone being selfish, by some invisible hand, the whole world will be all right. It is not working out like that. So you've got to go back to our fundamental beliefs, the fundamental architectures of our economic systems and our social systems also. It's tough. It's tough. And Sophia, you mentioned very well that nice slide of yours about relief. Well, we must provide relief immediately, and we must help the recovery. But my question is, what are we wishing to recover? The world as it was, or creating a new world, which would be different to the world that was, which we were the most successful in, a new world, a resilient world. This is tough. It is like redesigning an aeroplane while you're flying in it. We are in the system. We have to make sure that there's relief provided, and we have to make sure that there's recovery. But in the recovery, what are the ideas we're going to use? Can we switch the ideas about what we want to recover? Will we be able to understand the shape of the new system, the new, let me call it, hopefully that'll be a normal for a long time, the new systems that we must now, by our thoughts and actions, create, even while we are providing relief, while we're providing relief. So I'm going to switch to another cartoon and ask you, Mihir, for the next one. Yes. Now, this is a very famous system thinking cartoon. Many of you probably have seen it before, where we need tough actions at some times, and we believe that we should allow tough actions to be taken. So here's someone who's taken a tough action with the knowledge the person has and the authority so provided, and it starts to make things happen. And because things are connected to other things, which we are not aware of, they're going on sort of behind the scenes. Finally, as you can imagine here, what would happen is the system is going to come and hurt all of us, and it's going to hurt even the person who took the first strong actions. But this model about cause and effect in systems is the basic model that's used in system dynamics. And Ganesh, you mentioned that in MIT, the systems dynamics, you're very familiar with it. And in this model, yes, it does show that please be aware about the connections between various things, some things which were not in your eyesight, which you normally don't think about, but they are there and they are connected with what you're doing, and they will come back perhaps and hurt you without you realizing it. So I want to use that systems dynamics model here, but to add in now my thought about beliefs. What we use to take the first actions is our beliefs. And so if I wish to describe what is going on in a system, I have to put beliefs as also a variable and a force within the system. It is soft. We say, I can't quantify it. I can't model it on a computer. And so we exclude it. We exclude our biases and our beliefs from our models of the system. And there are others, biologists, who are actually the original inventors of systems thinking, who were talking about living systems. And they pointed out that living systems have life, and life is a desire to sustain themselves, as well as a consciousness that unless they sustain others around themselves, they will die. So to factor in to our models of the systems, a consciousness of our own beliefs and the effect of our beliefs on our actions is what we now need to do. And my two friends here, Mihir and Kabir, who were with Terry, master systems modelers, Ganesh, and using great, the names of those models also on the computers, and they're working on the environment. Now, the environment is a system that climate change people have so far treated as a physical system. It's about energy flows in the system. And then when we talk of circular economy, it's about materials and waste flows in the system. But we're realizing that cooperation to take care of the whole environment and the climate is not easy, because there are social forces and political forces within the system also. They are part of the system. So our models of systems must be social, technical models, not merely technical models. Now, social forces within the system are not so easy to locate because they're within the heads of other people. So we need a conversation in which people are able to express their beliefs in the light of the consequences of their beliefs on the health of the system. And so what we'll show you just now, they two will, Mihir and Kabir will show you just now. By the way, they're no longer with Terry, because they broke out to Terry and saying, look, we want to help real people get real results. So they have been working since then. They formed a little partnership amongst themselves called Desta, to work with communities in India, underprivileged communities in various parts, and might tell you a little bit about it later. and helping those communities and the government working in the community and the corporates working in the community to see themselves as a system together and to see what actions they could take cooperatively to make the whole system healthy for everybody. Right? So that's what they have been doing, and I thought they'd be very appropriate partners with us in this conversation today. What they have done in the last few days is, because of the COVID-19 shock, they began to map various forces going on in the system, and they've taken India to start with. The situation in India, as we were aware of this big threat, what happened in India, and you'll see a story unfold about how various beliefs come into play, various actors come into play, and the unintended consequences of some bold actions that we are taking. So with this, I'm going to request Mihir and Kabir to walk us through this story. But before I do that, my last thought is about acting and learning. I have realized, and I guess all of you have too, that we don't usually learn ourselves or think ourselves into new ways of acting. We act ourselves to acquire new ways of thinking. You can teach me as much as you want and have think tanks and give me all the things, but I'll continue to act in a certain way till I realize that the actions I'm taking are not producing the results. Then I start looking for another set of actions. And then until they prove themselves to give me results, I will not change my beliefs or what is the right theory of action and change. So we're going to have to redesign our aircraft as we are flying, learn new ways of thinking while we are acting. Kabir and Mihir, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mara, for that wonderful views and thoughts. Hello, everyone. Good morning from India. Kabir and I, we are going to share a model that we have created with Mr. Mara, as he said, depicting the story of what is going around in India at this moment. I would request Kabir to share his screen and start doing the storytelling of the model.
Yes, I'm just sharing it. Can you all see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, as Mihir said, we will take you through this systems thinking model that we have come up with. So the language of systems thinking that we're using here is of causal loop diagrams, and I'll take you through the story of this diagram, which is a depiction of events as they're happening in India. So, well, the spread of this global pandemic, COVID-19, has increased the mortality and the morbidity of populations all across, and especially so in all countries and in India. And this has impacted what Mr. Myra was referring to as a soft variable, which is hard to measure, but it's people's well-being. And this arrow here is showing that this people's well-being is being negatively impacted. It's being reduced by the spread of COVID-19. This action has led to the government having to take strict actions, which Mr. Myra was mentioning. And so this connection here is a connection of causality. The spread of COVID-19 resulted in the government having to take actions. We have marked out the key players in the system in green. These are the agents. So you'll keep seeing them pop up as the system diagram unfolds. The government actions have been multifold. One of them has been the lockdown. Now, the lockdown has resulted in social distancing and a behavioral change. And this is starting to reduce the rate of spread of COVID-19 and reduce mortality and morbidity in improving people's well-being. The other action that the government has taken is the testing, quarantining, isolation, which is also a balancing sort of a process, which balances out the spread of COVID-19 and checks it, which then is in order to bring down mortality, morbidity, and improve people's well-being. These are the actions that the government has taken on the medical epidemic management side. Now, people's well-being and public support for the government's actions are closely linked variables Both of these are soft variables, but they are very closely correlated, very closely linked with each other. So as people's well-being improves, the public support for COVID management that the government is doing improves. And this also then results in better social distancing, behavioral change. And this aspect is key for the sort of self-governance that is essential for management and for doing effective social distancing and behavioral change, and reducing the spread of COVID-19, bringing down its impacts, and improving people's well-being, which this arrow shows. But the very act of social distancing and behavioral change from a social psychological point of view, as well as from many other points of views, is actually bringing down people's well-being, people's sense of well-being as they knew it before. So these arrows here are evolving, and just keep a track on them. This shows the multiple forces that are impacting people's well-being from various parts of the system. Now, the lockdown has resulted in supply chain disruptions in transportation systems, and which has resulted in increase in hunger in, as Mr. Mara was saying, a very large portion of the population which might have been more vulnerable. And this has also is contributing to the increase in mortality and morbidity, which is the very thing that the government set out to solve, to fix. But through these side effects, there is a force that is also coming back on this. And it is also coming and impacting people's well-being and bringing it down. May just jump in as you feel.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Supply chain disruptions and the disruptions in the transportation systems have impacted revenues and profits of businesses all across. This has impacted the corporations, the small and the SMEs, the various corporations, and the disruption in the corporations and the businesses is also reinforcing this disruption in supply chain and transportation systems, which is further reinforcing the loss of revenues and profits. So this is a reinforcing cycle going on here between loss of revenues, corporations, and the supply chain that is impacting everything else. Now, the loss of revenues and profits are also resulting in the loss of wages, jobs, and incomes and livelihoods of people, and which is also contributing to an increase in the hunger that we are seeing all across. And this is depicted again. There's another arrow here, which is bringing people's well-being down. And it's important to note that people's well-being and public support are closely linked. So all changes here are impacting public support at the same time, immediately. The loss of livelihoods, the loss of jobs is also directly bringing down people's well-being, people's sense of security, people's incomes. Now, the loss of jobs and livelihoods has brought down the available labor force. As the migrant laborers, the daily wage earners have had to leave the cities, have had to leave the places of their work and go to other places, which is impacting the business cycles, revenues, profits once again, and which is further resulting in loss of livelihood and jobs, further impacting labor force, and further reducing revenues and profits. Another reinforcing sort of a spiral that is there in this system that we're seeing. This loss is short-term in the sense of the loss of labor, but in the long term, it could also result in costs for bringing back the labor and kick-starting the systems once we get over the lockdown periods. So there are short-term and long-term effects that we are seeing here as well. The available labor force coming down has also disrupted another sector, which is the agriculture sector. And the entire supply chain, from the harvesting to the threshing, to the transportation, to the mandis, the entire supply chain has taken a hit. This has also happened because of the disruption in the transportation systems and supply chain. Both these factors have contributed to a disruption there. And this is also contributing and can contribute potentially even further in future in reducing the food availability in the country, worsening the hunger problem that we are already facing. And people who don't have food could be in a worse position in future as well. The work in agriculture coming down has impacted revenues and profits in the agricultural space as well, impacting the farming communities, which is again a reinforcing loop, which is continuing to it's continuing to sustain itself in the agriculture sector as well. Now, the disruption in supply chain and transportation has also impacted the supply of essential items, access to Medicare facilities all across the board, both directly as well as indirectly through the loss of revenue and profits which businesses have seen, which have impacted the micro entrepreneurs, the small vendors, the auto walas, the small grocery shop owners, milk vendors. And that has also impacted the supply of essential items, access to Medicare facilities, which is contributing to, again, increase in morbidity, increases in the problems of population, and bringing down people's well-being. So that's another loop that is coming from here. You can see there are these actors that are getting mapped out slowly as the model builds up. Now on this side we have the NGOs and communities which are responding to the immediate crisis, as Sophia was also mentioning, in the relief stage. They're providing food packets, hunger relief, they're providing income relief. And so these actors are acting to fix these very evident immediate problems that are there. It's a very hard task that they are doing. And because they're addressing a problem which is emerging from a number of larger forces in the system, and they're addressing some of these emergent symptoms, which are key to be addressed, but it's a challenge. Now, people's well-being is, so you can see that it's being impacted by so many things. The initial loss of people's well-being being addressed by the government measures, and then all these side effects, so-called side effects, that are actually not side effects, but effects, have also impacted people's well-being. If this goes on for a long period of time, extreme measures, unprecedented measures might start going up. We've already seen this in India with so many migrants walking home thousands of kilometers. This is an extreme measure, unthinkable in other times that have happened. Also the riots in some places and other things that are happening, which could pose a challenge on the administrative capacity of a country, could raise administrative challenges. And this is, of course, a factor which would then impact everything else in the system from a management and administrative point of view. So that's something that we need to keep a look on as well. Yes, Mihir.
Yeah. So as you have seen that the system as it is, that's what we are presenting. And if you consider life before COVID-19, all these relationships, all these feedback loops were growth loops. The system was growing. The revenues and profits, supply chain, jobs and income, available labor force, NGOs, supply of essentials, lifespan of people, agriculture production and all that was going up. Now, a disruption happens to the system, and that disruption then changes the tide of the system. And all these reinforcing loops, which are producing a growth cycle, are now being turned down, as you can see with the number of arrows going down in the people's well-being. So the reinforcing processes are now taking the system down because of the disruption in the system. And we'll come back to this point where we say resilience of a system is the ability of the system to absorb an external event and come back into a state which is more healthy and self-organized. So in this current system, the way it was propagating growth, and a disruption comes and the cycles start going down. And then it becomes very difficult to halt the system and hope to recover, which is basically the theme of this session. Yeah, Kabir, go ahead.
Yeah. Now, these various side effects that are there, they are impacting public well-being definitely, but also it's important to note that people's well-being is closely linked with public support, and public support is essential for the self-governance angle of social distancing, behavioral change that is required to manage spread of COVID-19 and keep the mortality and morbidity low. So the very actions, the reasons why the first actions were taken, those very actions could get undermined through erosion of public trust, public support, in the management. So that's another, especially with extreme measures and administrative challenges, which potentially could build up through all the side effects. That's another thing that must be kept in mind.
Yeah. And well, the note about the models, what models are, what we are seeing here is basically a formal representation of our understanding of what is going on in the system. So as the model is shared with more people, we listen to more people and people contribute to the model will evolve over time and it will start incorporating what everyone's belief systems are. So models are basically representation of our mental understanding, our mental models of what is happening in the real world, and use these models as conversational tools to help us visualize the entire system together and maybe contribute and enrich our discussions, maybe see something that we might not have seen before, and also ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Mr. Myra, do you have any thoughts to share here before we move on to the scenarios that we have?
No, go to the scenarios. I want you to go.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead, Kabir.
Okay. So now already here we start seeing that there are various subsystems that this larger system is comprised of. So we have the epidemic management and the medical side, which is managing their part of the system here. We have the supply chain, the business cycles that are trying to manage this side, are interested in this side of the system. We have agriculture and the stakeholders there who are interested in the agricultural piece over here and addressing that. And then we have the NGOs, the community action that is trying to address the problems, which is over here, the problems of hunger and livelihoods. So, but these subsystems are all connected in the larger system. Their actions in these subsystems are impacting variables in the other systems, and they're all trying to address the common problem of people's well-being and public support in overall, while acting in their various compartments. So that's another point.
I just want to emphasize this point.
Yes.
I want to emphasize this point and to build what Mihir said. Having cross-model conversations, the need for the heart surgeon to be able to understand and be willing to listen to the liver surgeon or the liver physician, this is missing. And we're finding as we have more expertise and more departments and more wings of the United Nations and so on, that the experts don't understand each other even. And who's losing? We all are losing because of that. So this model is enabling us to ask the people, for example, in the corporate side, to sit with the others and say, okay, we are all part of the system. If I keep insisting on more resources to get the supply chain up, to get the business up, what effect might it have on other parts of the system, which would result in the well-being being affected? Now, there's a matter of time here. I mean, some things must be done first. But if while doing those things, you're not aware of the second order effects or the side effects of those, then the side effects come and hurt you right away. So you have to be aware of the possible side effects, and as you can see, they're real side effects, while you're taking the relief action, for example, or the prevention action. So Mihir, would you now walk us through how the dynamics will change over time?
Yes. So first, so we have three scenarios for you here. And again, these are for illustrative purposes, and we want to discuss more on this. First is a simplistic thinking being applied. It's like a mechanical thinking. You have switched off your refrigerator, you come back, switch it on. So the system goes down, comes back up, and then stays where it is. It is like ramping up or ramping down. You switch off a refinery, you switch it on, it takes a time, and then starts producing what it was producing beforehand. Now, this is the kind of thinking which ideally we would have in our mind, saying if there is a lockdown, the social system has been shut, you can open up the system again and we'll come back to where we were and stay there as if it's a static system.
You might allow me to say, Mihir, this may be the view who are doing well enough in the previous system. We hope the world will become normal like we were used to it. This, as far as everybody else is saying, is I hope it's going to wake those guys up to think about us and create a new system.
So that's the first piece there, saying wish that we come back to where we were for those for whom the system was working well. However, the next piece, the next scenario, possible scenario is What is our worst fear? Some of us do fear that the system has gone down, people's well-being has gone down. We are hoping that it would come up through relief measures, government packages, and all that. But it could still oscillate because of the turbulence that we are seeing in the system, and oscillate, and reach a new normal, which is lower than where we were before. This is not what we really want, and this is our worst fear. What if situation deteriorates and stays there? Would we see an oscillatory collapse of the system? And that's the real fear, and what can we do about it? But this is not the ideal scenario for a resilient system. A resilient system is something which should be able to bounce back. The third scenario that we want to present is that of our best hope. And that's what we all want to talk about, come together to create. Our best hope, which is dynamic, again, a dynamic scenario, is that we are facing a crisis. We are hoping that we'll come out of that crisis as improving people's well-being, and we'll reach a new normal, which is an improved well-being of the system. And the improved well-being of the system will also oscillate because its social systems are dynamic systems. Things will go up and down. But the system can maintain its own dynamic equilibrium at a higher normal as a self-adaptive, self-organized way of life. And that's our best hope, that what can we do in order for the system to be more resilient and bounce back from this? Can we reinvent the systems in which we live and hope to sustain a new normal?
Can I just come in here again? You use the word well-being up there, and that's very important. Okay. Normally, many of us are seeing what the economists are saying, and we are seeing all the time to say the GDP has gone down. When will the GDP come up, and percentages? So the normal being described by the economists and by the measures that we, all of us, corporates and others, are used to, is that let's see what will happen to the GDP. Okay. We are saying please shift. Think about well-being. We want the well-being to be at a high level. It will oscillate in all living systems. The sign of life is that you feel good some days and bad some days, but you don't die. It is an oscillation, but at a stable place, in a stable place. We want well-being to be there, and we don't care whether GDP is there or not. So I'm saying something quite challenging about the way we think and the way we measure. And as they say, dear managers, many of us, that what you measure is what you'll manage. And we keep focusing not on well-being, but we keep focusing on these economic indicators. And we can see that those economic indicators are a very small part of a very rich social system.
Yeah. And a word on indicators is that you can't really fly a plane which does not have the right indicators in the cockpit. And your indicators are basically the feedback that you get to be able to manage the system or improve its performance. So maybe, as Mr. Mara was saying, and as somebody else has put up in the chat, we also need to look at new parameters or new indicators, which also give us a holistic representation about the resilience of the system, not just as an economic system or ecological system, but a social, ecological, and economic system. Yes, so that's what we had to present, Kabir and me. Over to you, Mr. Myra, and I would be happy to jump in and answer and contribute to the discussion.
Ganesh, I think if you could just help us, there's some questions, a few of them, which Mihir, Kabir, maybe myself could answer about the systems and the way of using systems thinking in such a situation. We could do that. And then after that, I have a few thoughts about SVP.
Okay, sure, perfect. So thank you very much. First of all, I think it was a very, very well presented model, and I'm sure we all benefited from that, which I can also see from the chat line. I'm going to request Ipsita to open up the questions. So anybody who would like to ask a question directly on audio visual, please feel free to do that.
Hi, this is Joe Fernandez. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you, Joe.
This is a phenomenal system analysis that you guys have done. I wanted to ask a question around whether it's possible to find scenarios where if you take your social distancing and behavioral change that's being driven and the lockdown, right? If it's there are recommendations in different countries that if these are done in certain ways, they have a different action on morbidity versus on your supply chain and your agriculture itself, right? So, for example, you have the productive people work, but in fewer numbers, wearing masks, ensures that economy comes back, or at least their well-being goes up, while the morbidity rates remain low, right? They don't go to.
Can you mute everybody? Then anybody who wants to ask a question can unmute them.
So I was just, I don't know whether, so is that possible to kind of model on this where there is a certain way to take an action on a key element, let's say on supply chain, transportation, or work in agriculture, where you kind of bring in focus there, enable activity to happen while keeping social distancing, and therefore impact well-being while not impacting morbidity at the same rate? Is there ways to think of this model that way towards recommendations?
Yeah, the short answer to this is yes, of course, yes. But again, as I had said earlier, models are a representation of what we think, see, our belief systems of what is going around. So if somebody has a way of saying that if we acted on one part of the system through a behavioral risk reduction as a measure, can we overcome the problem of supply chain disruptions in this way? And through a conversational system dynamics process, through a group model building process, we can start incorporating those elements of what people think is going on or could perhaps happen, and do a collaborative inquiry saying, okay, if this part of the system is changed in this manner, if a couple of new loops are introduced, would it improve the well-being? And through that process, our assumptions get tested. We learn something more about what each other is thinking. And so the short answer is yes, it can happen. It can be done through a process. All right, Mr. Mara?
I like to ask a question, may I?
Yes.
Yeah, Umar, please.
Just a moment. Let me just, because it's a good opportunity. This way of each of us has a thought, a question, or an idea, something we want to do, like has been mentioned, to get the solution to be one which doesn't affect negatively other parts of the system, and to get collaboration with one solution, this conversation needs to be done together. It's not given to Mihir or someone else. I've got this thought, you tell me what the consequence is going to be. Okay, so this tool, and I've used this 20, 30 years, is to get the people in the room, get all the diverse actors who at the moment may be in contention with each other or not aware of each other into the room and say, this is a common problem that we have. Okay, now you understand some parameters about the system. Maybe something is missing. We missed out something here. Someone speaks up and says, okay, please, let's add this. Then the system model is more complete. A few more things are added. Then we come testing it. So we're using the system model like our lab together. So if I did this, what would happen? And the other person representing another part of the system is also within the conversation, who would be able to anticipate things which are not being put out explicitly in the model yet. So this is a great tool for collaborative action amongst various actors whose ways of thinking and expertise is different, but who require to collaborate. It must be done together. Thanks.
Oh, that's a good point. Thanks, Arun. Uma, you had a question?
Yeah, my question is around the role of the NGOs and specifically the impact the NGOs could be making. Because this pandemic actually descended on us all of a sudden, and in an unprecedented manner, it has impacted all of us individually. Various NGOs have decided to address the twin problems of hunger, that of jobs and income in their own ways. Now, since this problem is gigantic in nature, are there specific directions or examples that we could be looking at from countries who have experienced this pandemic earlier than India, for instance, China or Japan or South Korea? And what is it that we could be learning in terms of the specific roles that the NGOs could be playing or have played in reducing or in the impact of hunger, and particularly jobs and income generation?
I think that's a question to Sophia and to Ganesh. Learning across the system. What is the network structure of SVP?
No, I think just to very quickly jump in on this, I think what we are doing, as you probably, in fact, it also leads to the earlier question that I said I'll answer later. There's an opportunity for huge collaboration here. Like what we are attempting in Calcutta, for instance, to work with the Rotary clubs in Calcutta, and many of the Rotary clubs coming together to support the initiative of skilling. Similarly, right here in the city of Pune, working with the Mukul Madhav Foundation, a similar agenda. So I think there is an opportunity. I wouldn't call it consolidation, but I would call it a very collaborative ecosystem to develop where people can support each other. I mean, even in Pune, we are seeing the government is doing a lot of good stuff. The Pune platform, which I alluded to earlier, is doing very good stuff. Pune City Connect is participating. And we're all exchanging ideas as we speak to ensure there's no duplication and to make sure it happens. So I think here, clearly in an opportunity where it's not competition anymore, is actually collaboration for a very, very large social good that needs to be done and must be done. We had a question from Leif Fisher.
I have a question. Sorry.
Fisher, you've been very, very active on the chat. Would you like to ask a question? Leif Fisher? Okay, while she gets on.
I have a question.
Ruchi, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I wanted to understand, Arun, when you mentioned about what is it that we are wishing to recover. So would really like to understand what, according to you, might be that new normal that we need to make efforts to achieve. You know, because one of the takeaways from this discussion is about, you know, what there is right now, there is. But I think we all want to understand what is it that we can do to go towards something. But there is no common purpose defined right now. So we'd really like to understand if there are any views on that.
Yes, I do believe that having a common purpose, a shared aspiration, is a starting point for creating something new, which requires change by many people. So to describe a vision, what is the new world that we would like to have now that we become aware about the limitations of our present model, present world? What is the new world we would like to have? That's the first conversation. I have my views, but the point is all those who have to collaborate together must have this shared vision. So I do find in systems thinking and enabling people then to do systems acting, the starting point is that magnet, a vision that we feel compelled to go towards. It doesn't have to be explicit or numeric, but it's something that we care about together, and we are going to struggle to get ourselves there. So that is the starting point. That requires us to listen to other people's aspirations and not only our own. And we are very, very poor in listening to, let me say, the poor. We are very, very poor in listening to people not like ourselves. And unless we understand what everybody wants, how dare we drive the world towards something that we want? The most beautiful thing said about to NGOs' advice to young change makers was at the Gandhi Ashram 3 years ago, when somebody who's a very great change maker in our country, very humbly listening to all of them, said, look, the first thing I have learned, not first thing, the last thing I've learned more recently is I go into a community and wanting to change it. Did I ask them their permission to change it? Did I even ask them what they want in the community? Can I be of service to them? Not providing them money with a solution to say, hey, I am the answer for your problems. So this is going to require a shift. So this shift is about listening to many other perspectives and then collectively saying what's the shared aspiration towards which we'll collaborate and move forward.
Thanks, Arun.
Okay.
There's a question from Mr. Arun Waklu. So Arun to Arun, all yours.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ganesh and Arun and Sophia, for a very inspiring and invigorating discussion. The question is very simply, how can we create a platform in India in which the kind of collaboration that you described, Ganesh, can be centered around compassion for myself, compassion for other people, and compassion for the environment? because
Yeah.
I feel if this is brought into the model, it can be a game changer. So I just wanted some practical guidance from you, Arun, Ganesh. How can we create this platform which is deeply compassionate, deeply humble, great listening, and great conversation?
Yes, you use the word practical, Arun. Arun is, by the way, a very old friend of mine, and we are together, Arun and I, trying to get our TS alumni, and they are, great guys who succeeded all over, to just get off the back of the boat with their wine glasses and to something. And so he's been bringing this matter about waking up the compassion in us, which apparently we in Tata were supposed to perhaps have. And so coming to this, there's two practical things. You see, let me say this, that in complex systems, the systems take different shapes. With the same forces present, they will take different shapes in different spaces. So the problems of poverty with livelihoods and the environment, for example, or poor governance, they are differently in Kerala, as we are seeing, as not in Bengal, or they would in New York City, or anywhere else. So all the forces are there, okay? So there cannot be one solution, a complex system solution that applies everywhere. One size
Got it. Yes.
Solutions have to be found locally by collaboration amongst diverse actors, listening to each other. In fact, the SDGs, if you know, the first talk about all these big problems on the environment, on society, on poverty and inequality, etc. And the 17th says what? Partnerships.
Yes.
Unless we have partnerships,
Correct.
we're not going to solve any of those problems.
Absolutely.
SDGs, there were 8 of them. The 8th one was also partnerships. We keep not paying attention to it. But, Arun, I would say, learning from my experience, telling people to be partners and to be quiet and be compassionate and be good people, that's not it. We got to be in action. So therefore, I might put it without insulting anyone or myself, because I admire both Gautam Buddha and Mahatma Gandhi but Gandhi was in action. He was getting local communities to take care of their village.
Got it.
It's not about only transforming myself, which I should be more compassionate.
Correct.
I want my compassion to help others in action.
Beautiful. Thank you, Arun.
Communities in which there's action, where people listen and with compassion for each other solve the system's problem.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks. Ganesh, you want to add anything to that?
No, not really. I think the wisdom of collective wisdom is too high for me. But I think what we discussed before, Arun, I think we definitely should get together and talk about.
Certainly.
Any kind of action in this context. Not going to happen without a large dose of compassion. And I think
absolutely.
Passionate mission that needs to come together to make that happen.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Questions, folks? Ramesh, you had a question? Ramesh Mirakur, I think we were talking about, can the rich really design for the poor? So you want to ask that?
Yeah. So I was, given all the questions and Arun asked some, I think Arun and Arun had a very nice dialogue. My point is, we're expecting people to change, but most of the people who are actually trying to solve the poverty problem have never been poor themselves. Unless we get the people who are really poor into the dialogue, and some people already asked, are we asking their permission? We're not doing that. How are we going to make the change? And my second question, Arun, was about the scenarios, the third scenario. We didn't hear clearly what are the best case scenario, what all has to happen physically in action for the best case scenario to work out.
Thank you. You see, none of us can predict what is going to happen when a system is very complex and the actions of many people and of various forces in the system can combine in surprising ways. That's why we say they're complex systems and you cannot predict the outcome. However, you could choose a course of action which will take you towards a model, the more preferred outcome. There are options. The system could take this form or that form or some other form. What of my actions are likely to nudge the system to take the better form? Okay, and that's one. Therefore, the aspiration of what do I want the system to be like, and amongst the various options, which one is closest to the one that I would like to have? Again, because it's a complex system, unless other people's actions align with each other, the system will not take that shape. So it comes down to people collectively shaping it. So coming back again to systems theory, if you allow me, we found that these SDGs, for example, the systems change required. The theory of change must change to say, we want local system solutions to these global systemic problems. Unless all communities everywhere become resilient, unless people everywhere, the poor everywhere don't feel so vulnerable, we are not going to lick the poverty problem of the world. It's not about giving money to relief. It's about the communities becoming more resilient, their social environmental system becoming more resilient. So the theory is local system solutions to global systemic problems. And if it is local system solutions, then what can we do as SVP to help? And I come here to is strategic, vision, partners. Okay. First, yes, the vision amongst yourselves also, collectively, what is the nature of the world, the vision of the world that you would like to have? And I would build on what just you said. Please don't just sit amongst yourself and decide this is the vision of the world we are going to provide to others. You would have to bring in the voices of many others. It's like Gandhiji is saying, please let's listen to the weakest person when we make a public policy. The public policy must fit the weakest person and not us. So first, get a diverse group together amongst yourselves and listen to what collectively the vision should be. Then you SVP have more resources than the rest, knowledge resources and money resources. What can you do? And here it comes to me that if here there's a tool that is being presented by Mihir and Kabir, a way for people to form their partnerships, to choose courses of action collectively that will produce better well-being, then if you just provide this tool to a local community for them to be able to have a systems conversation, to be able to choose their initiatives, they'll be different in different places. In a community with more agriculture in it, surely that might take preponderance. In a purely urban community, it'll be something else. So you can't have one solution for every community, but the communities must find their solutions themselves, thinking about the system. So local system solutions for global systems problems. Good SVP, I'm saying, we're coming to strategic. You have to be a catalyst. I mean, no matter how much money you try and raise, it may all go down the same old way. You're small, but can you be a catalyst? What is a catalyst? A catalyst is not in the equation. The catalyst is not the resource. The catalyst changes the equation, provides knowledge. This is what a catalyst does, a chemical catalyst. There's a set of information in it which then infects the other resources and they take a different form in their combination. Could you be providing through this country and through the world, if you will, this way of thinking, a simple tool to start and let people have their collaborative conversations? They will enrich their description of the system in wherever they are. It won't be the same everywhere, but at least they'll have thought systemically. They'll have thought about the effects of actions on each other and their own effects on each other. And I come to, with your permission, because Sophia said this very well, the NGOs, what can we do to help? We missed over here, we could point it out, that right now, with the government in India requesting, and Ganesh, who pointed this out, that people should divert their money to go down the tight pipes on the medical side and the immediate food relief side, because they do have a large machinery to do that. The consequences are that NGOs themselves may not survive for 3 or 4 months. And then will we have a healthy, resilient system at the end of it? We don't know. So to put out also the implications of urgent actions being taken now, it might sound sensible now, on other organs in the system, the organs of NGOs, for example, who serve a very important purpose and will continue to do so.
Great. Can I request any of our SVP International Board colleagues to offer a comment? Mark is the SVP Melbourne Chair. Mark, any suggestions, any thoughts?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Mark. Go ahead.
Okay. Did you hear me earlier or not? I'm not sure.
No, we didn't. So I think you should start again.
Okay. All right. Thanks for inviting me to comment, Ganesh. Arun, I love the systems model. I've always been very attached to this way of thinking. I think it does a couple of things. One, it does provide an opportunity to look at the key points of intervention, which is very complex if you don't have a model like this. The second thing, just picking up on your catalyst, for me, a big question is one of leadership. That you need people in the system with sufficient breadth of thinking to pick this up and actually be the catalyst for those points of intervention that are going to make a big difference. So be good for you to just, you've commented a bit throughout about listening behaviors, but what else about leaders as a catalyst do you think might help take this further?
Well, thank you very much, Mark, for that question. Who is a leader? A leader is a she or he who cares for something very deeply, something which is not there, but cares to have it for others very deeply and takes the first steps towards it. Doesn't know whether those first steps will ultimately lead to that vision, but will have the courage like Mahatma Gandhi to take those bold steps, even though nobody else is. And that's what makes a leader. I'm noticing, Mark, here in India, and I'm enjoying this, my life, the last 2 or 3 years. There are young people in this country who have no resources like we have, who have no position, obviously, like any of us have had, but they are in their communities becoming great catalysts by using systems thinking, and they don't have to make it very elaborate. They just get the idea that let's get all the people in the room together and let's sit on the same side of the table and make a picture on the other side of who are we, what are we in the system, what is happening in the system. And they're making great change. And during this time of this COVID-19 in Punjab, these young people, remarkable. Yes, they're providing relief, but they've got together the picture of we must change the system as it emerges after this relief. So they've got local government people, not officially, but the government people who care say, I want to be part of this discussion every week, every weekend. And they go back during the week and, adjust their relief actions or their other actions to let this model emerge. So that's leadership. And these leaders are people who care. So we have to support them. We must support them.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I know we're running out of time. We just 4 more minutes, and I'll give Arun the last word. But just before, I just thought I'll make a blurb for SVP. As you know, this is the first of a thought leadership series. In fact, we are going to start here and end on the 13th of May with Mark, who just spoke, as well as Meher Padamji, who was our former Pune chair and chairperson of Thermax. So they will kind of lead off a session on leadership through the crisis. In between, we have a full session with CSR heads, corporate social responsibility, on how they think of resilience and supporting resilience. And we also have some of our very scaled NGOs who have continued to do successful work even in the last 4 weeks, talking about what resilience is all about for the social community. So do write to us in case you'd like to join any of those. As I said, and I think one of our goals, and that's coming through on the chat line from many of our partners, our goal is to build a very resilient SVP and really be a catalyst for change in the entire environment. And I think I'm delighted that so many people from international are here, so many of our partners here, and so many well-wishers of SVP are also here. So with that, Arun, back to you for the last word.
Normally in events, you use the beginning and the end as a plug. Remember, like you said, SVP, please remember, I'm going to say, 2 years ago, I got pneumonia, which is a thing which infects the lungs, and for the second time in my life. So I was told I'm very vulnerable, my lungs, and of course, COVID is a terrible threat for me. But last year when I was knocked out, I began to think that I should write a story which is in the shoes of young consultants, because I've been there, corporate CEOs, because I've been there. What are they wishing to do in life, and what may they need to learn and unlearn, as I have found things I have to unlearn. So it's a book called, and it's a book then of stories of such people with the models presented as they emerge, as a response to a need, rather than here's the model and so we use it. So it's called Transforming Systems, Why the World Needs a New Ethical Tool. Why the World Needs a New Ethical Toolkit. In that book, I conclude with presenting 3 disciplines. One of them is deep listening to people not like ourselves, about which was my previous book, Listening for Well-Being, Conversations with People Not Like Ourselves. So I am just offering that I put some thoughts down here. But more than that, Ganesh, in this meeting, I wanted to say that if you find that what Mihir and Kabir has put together here is a very good tool, maybe you could start as a more practical thing. start using it and propagating it. It won't cost SVP very much, but it's a gift you could be providing to communities.
I completely agree, Arun, and I think it's time for all of us to think a little beyond. And as we said, that the solutions we designed for a previous era may not be valid anymore, and we have to really look at how the new world emerges and reassess and maybe make new solutions for those. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of you for staying the course, and we look forward to seeing you in subsequent sessions. And thank you very much, Arun, Mihir, and Kabir, for what has been an absolutely fascinating.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.